Welcome to the Open Mic Podcast Show with Mike Midgley.
Hey, and welcome to the Open Mic Podcast, and it's episode 12, and today we're going to be talking about everything about digital PR. And I get asked quite often about digital PR and whether it's something that's necessary, and like every part of marketing, it's there for a reason. Commonly known as traditional PR mixed with your digital campaigns. But I'm joined with an expert who can do a lot more than I can on that, and today I'm really excited to be joined by Rebecca Appleton, the MD at Dakota Digital, who is an expert on digital PR. Welcome to the show, Rebecca. It's absolutely awesome to have you on, and I'm so looking forward to you sharing your expertise with the audience. How are you doing today?
Thank you, I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. You had a bit of a run out into these sticks to see us at the success of today. You managed to find us eventually.
Just a small wrong turning.
Absolutely. So, obviously I've known you a good number of years now, but tell us a little bit about you. For the audience, it's easy for me, like I do on a lot of these sessions, to bum up experts, and there's a lot of those experts out there who usually fall well short of the mark. On this occasion, you're not going to be disappointed. Rebecca is a true professional. So, award-winning journalist, proficient digital marketer, works all around the world. But in your words, Rebecca, tell us a little bit more about you, your company, what you do, how you work with the Success Hub, helping our clients create awesome content, and just let the audience know a little bit about you.
Okay, so I am a journalist by trade, so I have a journalism degree, online journalism, which is one of the first years that online journalism was actually kind of a master's subject that you could do.
Right,
it wasn't kind of just like the traditional newspaper kind of journalism and newspaper PR and stuff. So when I graduated, I went to work at a media agency in Spain. So I worked there for about 4 years and then moved to an SEO agency, which is kind of where I first saw that there was quite a lot of crossover between the two.
Linked together.
Obviously with SEO you're looking for links and stuff, and back then it was like, well, this is an easy way to build links. It's not easy anymore, but that was the case then.
I remember the day when you said, I want 100 links, and things like, no, you're going to get 10 now or whatever. But
maybe in 3 years. So from there I then set up my own agency, Dakota Digital, 8 years ago. 8 years on Sunday actually.
Oh, congratulations! I didn't realise that. Absolutely, an early congratulations.
So since then I have been working with clients all around the world, helping with digital PR and how that fits within wider digital marketing. So whenever we work with a client, we always look at whether PR is going to be relevant. It almost always is, because no matter what type of business you are, how big you are, what your industry is, what your product or service is, you will have news. So PR will always be something that you can kind of tap into. It might not be something you do all the time, but it's definitely something that should be on your radar.
I think having it on the shelf is important, and I think a lot of companies think, PR is a luxury, or I only use that for big companies.
Or it's kind of offline, it's nothing to do with my digital. That's really not the case.
And that's what we're going to get really down to the nitty gritty. But tell us about some of the clients that you've worked with in the past and some of the campaigns that you've done, just so the audience can get a little bit of feel. Obviously, confidentiality is aside, I understand that. But if there's anything that you can share, whether it's brands or not, that would be great.
So we work with clients across a massive range of industries and really weird and wonderful products and services. I guess mainly kind of the most popular kind of PR we do is consumer PR.
Right.
We do lots and lots of health and fitness PR. Also food and drink, which is nice. Free samples.
Lots of free samples, absolutely.
Fashion and beauty as well, which is good. But also lots of kind of stuff that you might think would be a little bit too dry for PR. We do loads of crowdfunding stuff as well.
Wow, interesting.
PR is quite important for crowdfunding, especially now when there's so much competition. Finance, technology,
so a broad spectrum. So if you sat out there thinking, is digital PR for me, then there is a good chance it actually is.
Definitely.
And obviously, speak to a professional, find out, but get your goals clear. I think is something we're going to talk about later on. So,
and expectations.
Absolutely. I think that's like anything in digital, whether it's digital PR, digital marketing, campaigns. Obviously we work in the HubSpot market, we work in the inbound market, and it's just some people have got unrealistic goals. They want 1 million leads coming through a week, and they've got to reach 20 people. They're doing organic only, and they wonder why the phone's not ringing. So getting those expectations is set. Well, that's great, and no doubt we'll dig into a little bit more detail there. So welcome to the show, Rebecca. I'm really pleased to have you on. So I think for the audience, really getting started, to really sort of add some value and to put this into perspective, you know, in your view, what makes a good digital PR sort of campaign? You know, where would you start with that? You know, what's your thought process around that?
So the very first thing that I always say to any of our clients is PR is not a sales tool. You're not speaking to your end user. You have to go in thinking about the journalist and their role. So the very first thing that's key to a good PR is your news angle.
Yeah.
So if you launch a product, that's obviously a good news angle. If you are having a sale and are offering free postage and packaging, not so much.
More direct response.
Even if you don't have anything that you think is immediately kind of like hold the front page, as a business you can generate news and generate a good PR. You just have to be a little bit more creative about it.
Yeah.
So for example, for the Success Hub, you could maybe run, if you don't have it like a new product or a new service or a new hire to announce, something that's kind of traditionally newsy, you might want to do a survey or do a piece of research with your clients. You might ask your clients,
or something
exactly,
like
what are you most concerned about when it comes to digital marketing? What are your like pain points? Is your budget going to increase or decrease next year? Why? What have you struggled with? And you can turn those results into a piece of news because it's data that you've generated. It speaks to the sentiment of the business community and creates a little bit of insight. That's not something that you have kind of sat around and wait to happen like you've launched a new product. You can generate that kind of
force
news.
the issue with it, and you could get valuable out of that data as well. I mean, I know from the HubSpot world, and I'm sure other industries do it as well, but they do state of inbound. So they poll everybody, all their users around the world, and you know, there's tens of thousands of people do that globally and things like that from that size of organisation. Then they produce like a 70-page document, you know, which then becomes the state of inbound with reports, and then it helps you tap into and things like that. So you don't have to necessarily be a HubSpot to do this, is what we say, though, Bex, is it? You know,
anything. Anything, but the key is that you have to think about the news angle. It's not something that you, as I said, it's not a sales tool. You're not speaking in your PR, you're not sending that to your ideal customer who's going to buy from you. You're telling a journalist, this is something that's happened with us, this is interesting, this is news, and this is why, and they will then report on that, and that's how you get your brand visibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a sales pitch, and that's kind of the very kind of first key thing that I would say.
Because if you give a sales pitch to a newspaper editor, he's going to pass it to the paid department, or put it in the bin, or he's going to say put it to the paid advertising department because it's not newsworthy for the audience. So no, that makes a ton of sense. And I suppose just building on that, really, you know, if somebody came up to you out of the gate, as I call it, Bex, and said, you know, what's the best advice to write a strong PR sort of release? You know, for the layman out there, because there'll be a lot of people listening to the show who, you know, there'll be seasoned pros like yourself, but there'll be people there saying, oh, where do I actually get started? You know, what's the best thread to, you know, to pull on and get going? So, you know, best advice to write a strong PR release. You know, how would you play that?
So a lot of people find it difficult to write a good PR initially, but there is a formula to it. So once you've kind of cracked it and you've got that structure in your mind, you can repeat that no matter what kind of like news announcement you're making. So the first thing is that think about a newspaper article that you read, or even have a newspaper article in front of you, and if you study the intro, you'll see that gives you the whole of the story in 2 or 3 sentences.
So a bit like an exec summary that you'd see in a business plan or a financial plan or something like that.
Yeah, so that's always your first bit of a really good strong PR that's well structured and formatted, that a journalist is going to read, they're going to know what they're getting, and they know if they can use it or not. It's called the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why.
Perfect.
Have that in your first paragraph, and you're well on your way to a good PR.
That's brilliant.
Definitely the first thing. Second thing is write in the third person. So just as we said before, you're not speaking to your customer directly with your PR, you're speaking to a journalist. You need to speak about your company in the third person. So you're not saying you can buy this or you can benefit from this. You need to take a step back from it. So disassociate yourself a little bit from.
And that can be hard for especially small businesses, because they get so close to the trees, and it's all about me.
Exactly.
And we have something here at the Success of what we call the we diarrhea. And you see the brochures and the releases, we at this, we. It's like, no, that's not what we want.
Think of it as somebody completely different. You're describing something else. You're removed from the company, and the company is a separate entity. Talk about that one thing. So that's, if you're stuck with that, an easy thing to do is either, as I said, have a newspaper article or a magazine article at the side if you look at the style, or go on to, say, Apple's press page
Yeah.
or Sony's press page,
Yeah.
and look at a couple of the PRs that they've got published in their newsroom. Look at kind of the language they use, the structure they use, how they refer to themselves. You can literally kind of go through each paragraph and say, right, that's the summary, that's the quote, that's the background, and you can follow that same structure.
And it's like a skeleton through there.
Exactly.
I've had a couple of questions, and if you've got any questions, you can use the hashtag #TheOpenMic or hashtag Growth Engine, or just post a comment, and Bex will get that answered for you. But when I've done podcasts before, or even sort of the deep dive training in the pit stops, where we've referenced big brands, Bex. So we've referenced Snap-on Tools, McDonald's. I get a lot of questions coming in that's saying things along the lines of, yeah, but they're really big global businesses. You just mentioned earlier, like Apple's news page or Sony's news page. Again, I just want to address to the audience and the listeners that format is relevant whether you dare I say, a small corner retail outlet, BBC, or your Sony. That format's going to work. It's not just for big businesses.
No, any kind. Use it as your cheat sheet. Just literally print a page off and just identify that's the intro, that's the quote. They've given a little bit more info there. I've got another quote here, and that's like your roadmap, your structure for your PR. Other things you'll notice, like, don't exaggerate. You're quite concise and succinct when you're talking about something. Unless you can back a claim up, it's not going to be the best in the world, because the journalists won't respond to that. Their job is to source facts and be impartial. So you need to make that job as easy as possible, and they're more likely to look at your release and want to use it.
I think the good thing with that as well is if you can get a good connection with a good local journalist as well. If you trust your articles because it is factual, you make their job easier. It's fair to say, without favouritism, but it's going to publish more of your stuff if it's relevant as well. So there is a win-win there, isn't there?
And especially if it's written in that correct formula, because they can just copy and paste and use it. You're making their life easier. Whereas if you do something like we have a common thing where a client or somebody who's done a press release and wants us to have a look at it, they might send it to us in a PDF. That's no good to send to a journalist because they can't copy and paste. The formatting goes through it.
Manually type it
or audio type it. Make it useful and kind of usable as well.
Absolutely, that's great advice. That's brilliant. So take a look at that. Get that framework. What we'll do as well, Bex, is we'll do a download at the end of this podcast on the blog, and we'll probably put like a PDF of the framework up there, so the listeners can actually download that and use that as a template to use it when we go from there. So we'll get that added there. If you're listening, or you pick this up on one of the channels or something, just shoot us a message at hashtag #TheOpenMic or hashtag Growth Engine, and we'll get that sent back out to you as well. So that's a good sort of build up and a background. So we mentioned earlier about what makes good PR, but how would I identify the relevant media for digital PR? Is there some stuff that just works better than others, Bex? What would you say?
I think you have to keep an open mind, but you also have to be very targeted. So there is kind of a danger of thinking, you've spent this time coming up with a news angle, sitting down to write your press release, you've proofread it, you want it to go to everybody, but you have to rein that in. That's not the right approach, because if you start sending news to journalists that are completely irrelevant to that news, the next time you have something that might be useful for them, they're not going to read it because you've sent them something they can't use.
It's the cry wolf situation, isn't it? Type of thing,
so you don't kind of want to take a blanket approach when you're building your press list and send it to as many people as possible. You want to be targeted, because that's where you'll see success. So
you mentioned earlier about working in the sports and fitness environment. Obviously, if we've got a specific publication or sports chain or whatever that you promote, match the industry to the audience is what we're saying, which is basically marketing anyway. Understand your audience and send that.
Think about kind of what publications do your clients read, which websites do they go to, which magazines do they subscribe to, what do you subscribe to that's relevant to your industry, what trade magazines do you get through the door every month. Those are kind of your basic building blocks and your starting points. You might want to expand that out and look at influencers. You might want to do some social media searching for hashtags. You might want to do some manual Google searches and look for magazines or websites related to your industry, and then manually build a list. There are specialist tools available as well. We use a media database called Cision, and that's a global database, so that has something like 1.2 million media contacts on around the world.
Like a PR Newswire, is that the software tool?
So Cision own PR Newswire, but Cision is the media database, so it's basically just like a massive list of every journalist in the world,
so you
and
can
every
filter
newspaper.
That out out and send it in a target.
So this morning I did a media list for shipping and freight.
Wow, bit industrial.
So really glamorous and exciting. But no, yesterday we might have done something for fashion, or food editors. So you just have to. It is a process and it is time consuming, and obviously you can look to your local area as well.
I think one thing on that, and I try and put this into as many publications that I do, whether it's podcast recordings, blogs, face-to-face meetings, is that expectation as well. You touched on it right out of the gate, and you just said there again about how time-consuming it is. I don't actually think that a lot of our clients, understand the amount, whether it's keyword research, SEO, backlink building, audience building. From an expectation, I know it's slightly off script to a degree, Max, but from a expectation point of view, you mentioned it right out the gate. I just want to bring it in at this point. When you're working with a client on digital PR, how do you set that expectation? How do you, there's different characters, and everyone wants the best bang for the buck, as a point of phrase. How do you set that expectation?
I think just being really clear right from the start, though. I mean, so we get a lot of calls, and someone will call up and they'll say, right, I want to do a press release. Which newspapers am I going to be in? Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I don't know what your news is. Who is it going to? When's it going? So I think kind of the key thing is just to understand that it won't happen overnight. Your first press release might not get published. Your second press release might not get published. But each time you send a press release out,
it's building momentum, isn't it?
You're building momentum. You're kind of reminding the journalists that you're there. You're staying visible. If they're then working on something a couple of weeks down the line or a couple of months down the line, you're going to be more memorable to them because you're constantly reaching out. Know the timeline as well. So it's kind of more common that you'd think that we'd get asked the question 4 hours after a press release is being sent out. I can't see any news coverage. Even a day after, I can't see any news coverage. Well, I mean, some journalists, they'll get 200 pictures a day.
Yeah, easy,
Depending on the type of media outlet you're targeting, there will be a time delay. I would say that anything from a few days up to 12 weeks plus is completely normal. So you have to factor that in when you're planning, I think, and just kind of appreciate that a press release isn't something that, it's not a link building tool for SEO where you're going to write a press release and you're going to send it out, and 3 days later you're going to have the New York Times and the Huffington Post linking to you. It's a much slower burn. You have to kind of appreciate the way that the media work, and that it is its own kind of discipline. It's not something.
It's not a living, breathing animal, because it could be more important news. It could be anything that could influence that. Isn't
your journalist might be out of the office on holiday. They might be out of the office covering another story. They might be filing a piece because they're at deadline. They might be planning their stories for the next 3 months. They might be weighing up your story with another story that's quite similar. There might have been something that happened in that industry that day that was just too big to ignore. They might have covered something recently. They might have filed it away to come back to it in a couple of weeks when they've got something in the diary that kind of coincides. So there's loads of reasons, and you can't really influence that. I think it's a common myth that you have to have a relationship with the journalist for them to publish your news. That's not the case. A journalist doesn't exist solely by kind of trawling their friends for people they know. They're looking for news. You don't have to have always have spoken to that journalist before or to have gone for lunch with them for them to publish something. You just have to give them a story they can use. And I think that's kind of the key thing, is just to kind of appreciate how it actually works.
That's a great overview. And I think when we work in the investment side of what our other side of our business is, some of the tech, the fintech and the finance and the tech investors, they're getting 40, 50 pictures a week for the latest app, the next Uber, the next Facebook. And
they're not sitting there with nothing to do waiting for your press release. It's a process.
And same with the investment things. And they sit there and people, not my clients, but I've heard people say, well, I've sent these investors my pitch deck and I've not heard from them. Well, how long has it been? Well, it's been 2 weeks. Well, I always say 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They've got other things to be doing, and it's got to be remarkable, because, and same with content, whether we're blogging, whether we're content creation, social, digital PR, it's got to be both relevant, as you've said, you've got the relevancy in there, it's got to be remarkable, it's got to be able to be used and simple. So that's a great thing from that side, and thanks for covering that. So I think that we've covered really, what makes good PR. some advice around that, the relevant types of media that would work. But what do you think the common mistakes are, Bex, that people make with digital PR?
I mean, sometimes it does happen instantly.
Yeah.
You might get a response or a couple of responses within a day or two. If it's a really good story, you might get coverage that same day. So when we did a PR for a crowdfunding campaign, for example, and within about 48 hours, it was on the front page of Sky News,
Right.
It was in the Huffington Post, it was on the New York Times, it was in Time magazine, like the biggest magazine. That's very rare, but it does happen. So I think the first thing is that people kind of get deflated when it doesn't happen instantly. They've put this effort into sending the PR out, and then it's not covered everywhere, so they kind of give up. That's a mistake because, as I said, it is something that takes a little bit of time to kick in.
So it's back to expectations.
Yeah, so you can't go into it thinking that it's just a one and done thing. It is something you'll have to keep doing, just the same as with blogging or social media or SEO.
Keep it forefront of mind.
Yeah, exactly. A second mistake is not thinking about the news value and just having it as a sales pitch.
So people see straight through that.
Yeah, and not targeting, just send it to everybody, because that will sort of trip you up a little bit further down the line when people don't want to read your news.
No, absolutely. And we covered that about the cry wolf example from there. So keep it relevant, set your expectations, and move on from there. So moving on, we talk about PR offline, PR online, digital campaigns. Somebody asked me best describe digital marketing, and I call it the Wild West because it's, if you go back 200 years, people were shooting people in the streets, and the lawlessness was out there, and there's a lot of bandits and cowboys in the digital world. Obviously this is not what this podcast is about, but there's always horror stories. I spent 10 grand on this campaign and it's not done anything, or 100k here or 5k here. And I think there's a accumulation about expectations, maybe people taking advantage of people just because they want to spend money, and things like that.
I think, sorry.
No, I
was just on that. I would just kind of, my word of warning would be that if you ever speak to a PR agency or a freelancer or anybody and they guarantee that they're going to get you into a certain newspaper or magazine, it's not true. Unless they're buying that space, the only person who guarantees that position is the journalist and their editor
who'll sign off on it.
So don't put your money in, your trust in kind of that promise, because it's not true.
Yeah, and again, guys, if you're unsure about a proposition that you've got, I'm sure that the digital PR companies and the digital marketing companies that you're currently using are doing a great job. But if you've got any, you're unsure, just shoot us a message at #TheOpenMic or #GrowthEngine, and then we don't want to get into a fist fight about saying he said, she said, and pointing fingers. That's not what we're here to do. But we're here to help, and we're here to give you a view on it, or at least give you a steerage about maybe the best way to approach your existing agency in a polite and professional manner. Most do a great job, and like I say, it's usually the client's expectation that's a little bit misaligned more than anything, but we're here to help. If you need that, let us get those questions answered for you. So just sort of wrapping up as we sort of come to the end of these sort of digital PR sessions, Bex, how can the listeners really integrate what we call digital PR with the rest of their digital media and content and the campaigns that they're currently running? What's the best strategy to integrate the digital PR with all that?
I think of it as another piece of content.
Yeah.
So look at ways that you can reuse it. So you could turn it into a blog post and put it on your blog.
Yeah.
You could have a media center on your site and put it there.
Like a wiki or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You could include it in your email newsletter, send it to your customers so they know kind of all the great things you're doing, your product launches and kind of the innovations you're making. You can include it in your media pack, in your digital media pack. Take it to an event with you or print it off. You could use it when communicating with bloggers to sort of show them what you can offer when you want to collaborate with them.
Yeah.
Just think of it as another piece of content and reformulate as you would anything else.
No, that's great. And I think as you document as you go along, I mean, a lot of challenges is to create content, but you can document things like this and multi-purpose and get it sorted out.
Exactly.
So I think that's really interesting, and it's one of those subjects that's not widely known. People talk about digital campaigns, social media, but that PR should be an integral part of your digital strategy. If you want to know more about digital PR, or you want to send a message direct to Bex, you can check them out at dakotadigital.co.uk. That's D-A-K-O-T-A, I get it right, D-A-K-O-T-A digital.co.uk, or the Facebook group, I believe, or the Facebook page at Bex as well, which is facebook.com/Dakota Digital PR. And again, I'm sure you'll be happy to answer any questions for people or any questions from there. So I've really enjoyed you being on the show, Bex. Really, thanks for sharing the expertise. It's been dynamite, and I really appreciate what you do for us and our clients at the Success Hub as well. So thanks for adding so much value to the Open Mic show, and hopefully we'll have you on another show in the future. So again, if you want any of the resources that we've covered in the show, you can go to blog.thesuccesshub.io, or send us a message on Twitter using the hashtag #TheOpenMic or hashtag Growth Engine, and we'll get one of our team to get those resources sent over or answer any questions. So have a great week as always. To get in the game, go do the hustle, go make it happen. Thanks for being on the show, Bex. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you in another Open Mic podcast real soon.
You have been listening to The Open Mic, brought to you by the Success Hub. To find out more and to get the resources we have mentioned in this podcast episode, simply visit blog.thesuccesshub.io and view the podcast section. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode. This podcast and associated materials is published under copyright to the Success Hub. All rights reserved. No reproduction of this material is permitted.